Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how we can enrich the tokens with the custom claims, and not only that, we'll be using this API connector to connect to multiple Azure functions, and we will be inserting the user information into the database and return the user ID that was created. So all of these things will happen in one single call when you log in, and we will be able to do this. And if you look at the screen, we have these external claims. These claims are new. You see this user ID is returned, and the roles, the user role is also returned, which is coming from here. So in one call, we'll be able to insert this record into database, and then we will insert the role or do some custom logic and return these information in the claims. And that's why you see this user ID as 10 here, and then the role has 2 roles for this user, and it is coming as a comma separated role. So all of these things can happen in this video, and watch, it will be very interesting. Come, let's get started. So those who have already watched this video, this Enrich token with external claims, we are going to do almost same thing, but little more information that we will be processing, and we will also have a couple of more Azure functions that will talk to the database. So this is part of the e-commerce application that we're building, and so now we will go step by step just how to configure. Don't worry about the code. I will show you all the codes and tell you what exactly you have to do, and you can benefit from here. Alright, so this is the e-commerce app functions. We talked about these 2 endpoints, which is the user profile function and the get user role function in one of my video. If you have not seen that video, I will give you in the description. You can go and watch, but these 2 I will give you in a high level. Get user role is to pass the object ID, which is the AD object ID, and then it will go talk to database and returns the number of roles associated with this user. If there is no role, we'll be inserting the roles in the user profile function. So user profile function is to create the record itself in the database, and both the function uses the entity framework core, and these are the entities. Now, what is part of this video? There is another function called sign up validation. The sign up validation is something that we already saw in my previous video. In the previous video means the video that I was showing in the YouTube channel, right? So this is exactly the same, but little more tweak added to this. It will be interesting. So let me go through a high level of this function. So basically, this function is being invoked by Azure AD B2C when you try to log in or when you try to edit your profile. When it is doing this, it will send a request, and request will look like this. I have already commented out, so it will be interesting. The request body will look like this. Like, it will have some client ID, its default information that is there in the application claims. I mean the user attributes. Actually, these are the user attributes. The email, object ID, this given name, all of these things are user attributes. So based on what user attributes you selected, these information will come. Now, when this function receives this information, it will go and validate the incoming request with the header. The header will have a base 64 encoded username and password, and that username and password is coming from here. Basically, there is something called admin. Username is admin, password is Karthik. You can have any name here, it doesn't matter. Actually, this name is coming. Let's minimize this, right? So what will happen is it will come and execute this function. This small method is basically taking the information coming up in the settings. It will encode and validate with the incoming header. If everything looks good here, then it is successful, so it will return true. Let's see who is calling this. So it's been called in the starting of the location itself. So if the authentication is successful, we are good to go. Further, it will read the body, and then it will log few informations for our understanding, right? All the records that I told you, it will be in this kind of formats, right? So basically what we are doing is we collect all this information, and here is the thing that we do here. So what we do is we are going to call these two functions. The first one is the user profile function, and then first one, we call this call update user profile function. So before we call, we manage to create a profile which will be having information based on the request. So the request will have the object ID, display name, email ID, whatever it is, given name, surname, based on what you pass. Here is the place that you need to modify according to your tables and the information that you receive. Now we send this to this function. What this function does, this function is formatting the URL and it is calling another Azure function, which is this function. So there will be three functions hosted, and the first function will call this function, and when this function is called, it will do its work and it will create an entry in the database, and then it returns the data. So once the data is returned, what will happen, we will get the AD object ID here. We then pass this AD object ID in this function. This function will eventually call, which is a get endpoint, and it will return the information. So once these two informations are returned, okay, what we are doing it, we added two attributes called user roles and user ID. So whatever data we received, we assign it here. Okay, that's why you receive this information. You see this in this claims, you see user roles, comma separated value, and another one called user ID called the value. The value is 10, which is coming from the database. You can see here it's coming from database. So we will delete everything and we'll see how it works. Okay, now I will leave these two here because this is part of the previous video and I don't want to affect this. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it here. I will give you the full code in the GitHub repository, so do not worry about the code. Great, so this will be database driven. Okay, now this function is hosted. Let's go ahead and see how it is hosted. Okay, so as part of the e-commerce application, I have created a new function called LSC Smart Hub Functions, under which these three functions are hosted. One is the update user profile, get user role, and sign up validation. So these things are hosted. Now, what you need to understand and don't forget is, when you run this code from your local, okay, these are the values taken when the local code is running. So for example, DB context you will change according to your database, and these informations are coming here. You see this? These two is coming to from a local host, because when I run this is what the port runs for this application. Here is a tricky thing. These informations are only for local. You should remember that. So in order to this function to work, you need to come to the function, go to configuration, and in the configuration, literally you need to create those configuration objects here. So once it loads, I'll tell you. Okay, so here under configuration, we need to create a connection string. So that's coming from here, DB context, and I created the DB context. How do you create? Click on new, give a name that should match that name which is there in the configuration, provide the value, choose the SQL, say OK, and save it. But here my value is pointing to the Azure database. Okay, it's not the local database. This value here is talking to Azure database. Okay, now here you see this, there are plenty of things. So this one here, I can show you the value. No, in real time these values will not be like this. It will be real values, or even these values are taken from the client secrets, I mean the key vault. So these two we have to add. So for this, click on add new application setting, give the name, give the value, and after you are done with that, so add this one, and these two. If you look at these two, the values will be based on the functions which is hosted. I will show you from where these functions are coming, these values are coming. Okay, these are the function values. So you remember all of these properties are added here, Let's go to overview, and basically those two functions are coming from here. So you need to go here, click on here, and click on get function URL. Copy this, go to configuration, and paste it in the respective properties here, this and this. Okay, that's how these values came. Okay, so settings are done, functions are hosted. Now the next step is important step. Let's go to Azure AD B2C. How do you go to Azure AD B2C? You will be in the directory, select the directory and come here. Like for example, if I'm here, so let's say this is the portal that I logged in. Okay, then I click on switch directory and then select the directory to which I have to come. So I come here and then what do? We go to user flows. Okay, in this user flow, this is the user flow. Sign up, sign in is a user flow that we used for this application. If you have seen the full stack development video, this application is eventually using Azure AD B2C, this one. So I click on this, okay, and then couple of things you have to do. First thing is, you need to go to this user attributes and then create, you have to come out, sorry. First you have to do is, go to the user attributes and click on add and create two attributes called UserId and User Roles. So if you click on it, it will be like this: username, type a string, and then that's it. Similarly, user roles. See, I need UserId and user role. If you are working with employee ID and something else, you create according to what your need is. So in my case, I have a table called user profile. I need UserId and user roles for my understanding. So I created these two. Okay, so that's the first step. You need to first create user attributes. Then what you do is click on this, come to user flow. In user flow, if you remember in the previous video, in this video, what I would have shown is we need to go to user attributes and do not select the attributes that was created. We are not collecting anything from user. So remember, user attributes, if you select these two, then when you try to log in or create user, these two will be prompted. We are not collecting these from user. Instead, uncheck this, save it, and then go to application claims. Application claims means we will update these claims behind the scene and send it in the token. So here, if you look at this, user ID is checked, user role is checked. Similarly, there were other two things that are as part of the other video, right? Use an employee name, employee role. So anything that you wanted to send in the claims, you select here. These two are now selected. It's saved. Good. Now let's go to API connector. When you click on API connector, if you're doing it for first time, nothing will be here. Okay, so what you have to do is click on manage API connector. This manage API connector, you can come from outside also. So here, API connector is here. What you have to do is click on new API connector, provide a meaningful name, provide the URL. So here URL is nothing but this URL, the sign up validation that we added here, right? So this one, if you go here and click on get function URL, copy this, that will go here, and then you need to choose basic or certificate. In this video we will talk about basic because the code that we have will validate the basic, not the certificate. So click on basic, provide the name that will match what you have put in the configuration, which is admin, like admin and my name, right? In your case, put a proper name and a proper password. Okay, these two should match your code. It's very important. It should match the code here. I mean the value. Okay. So you added a name, added the URL, username, password, click on save, done. Then this will look like this. Okay, it will look like this. Then what you do, you go to again the user flow. Click on user flow, click on the sign up, sign in. Okay. So for good, let me know if I'm going fast. Okay, and then click on API connectors. See, now there are three options for us. We will talk about the third option. The third option is, it says before even creating the claims in the token, what function you need to call. In my case, there are two functions. This function is part of the previous video. which will not talk to database. Okay, I will choose the function that I just hosted it and click on save. You're done. Now what happens? You come here and we are going to log in and see, but before that let's clean up the users. Okay, so first let's clean up these users. Okay, so let's go and delete this. See, we cleaned up all the users. We do not have any users. Okay, now what we will do, we will try to log in. So when you try to log in, this will come because that's the user flow that I have used. It doesn't matter whether you log in or create. Both the thing, before creating the token, it will call the sign up validation function. So because this user is already created, I'm going to just sign in, and you can see it takes few seconds because it's calling multiple functions. But once this is done, it returns the token. Okay, now let's see what happened here. I'm going to again run it. You see this? The user got created. Initially in my video I showed you 10, but I just deleted and created because it's 11. Okay, so now you can see this user was created, role was added, and everything is great. So if I just take this ID token from developers window and then go to JWT, then if you go to jwt.ms and paste it, you can see user role attribute, the new claims that we added is coming with the role name, and the user ID is coming as 11. See, this is very helpful. Now the token claims has these value. We can use these information in your web API to see what role the user has, because there is no concept of called role based access in Azure AD B2C. Because of this new feature, we can actually utilize or leverage this role based thing based on this custom thing. So we have the roles of the user, we have the user ID, so we can perform a lot of operations based on these two in the claims itself, and that's how it will work. It will be very nice. Now if you're new and looking at this code, I will give you all the details in the description as well as in the readme file of the GitHub repository. So if you go here to the GitHub repository and under the e-commerce web app, the UI project will be there. For function, it is here. I will update this function, so you will have a lot of information here. Now if you're doing this and sometimes you fail, do not worry, because trust me, I will show you what happened to me. There were some issues when I was trying to implement this, and I had a tough time to get this work. And if you look at this invocation, there were several times I failed. You see this? Only 12 times I succeeded. For the last couple of times I succeeded carefully, but there were multiple failures. So failure is okay. As and when you try and finish it, you will remember what was error. But let me give you some information of what happened to me in case you are also doing the same mistake. So what is happening is, when you go look at the let's take a look. So what happens, this get user roles, right? Get user role, if you look at the function, let me show you how the function looks. See, the function is looking like this. We have to replace this ID. Okay, so the mistake that I was performing is, if you look at the sign up validation and if you come here, see, I was just directly using the URL, passing the ID, and that was causing me the binding error. Okay, so runtime binding error. So basically now I got the full URL, I replaced this with the object ID, so I got the correct URL, and then everything started working. Okay, so remember, the important thing is about the custom claims, I mean the application claims and the user attributes. You need to choose those things correctly, and if you execute these functions perfectly, everything will work. And make sure you configure everything in Azure in order for you to test this. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section, and for the reference, take a look at the other videos as well. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tech tutorials. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified when we post new videos. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Happy coding!